Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Alumni Career Conversations, Career Chats. Still haven't landed on what I like better. I am Erica Hodes with the Career Development Center, and we are excited today to have with us Adwoa Asare, who is an MBA alum from 2019. Hi, Adwoa.
Hey, everybody.
How are you?
Doing pretty good.
It's so good to see you. I haven't seen you. I saw you since you graduated, but it's been a minute.
Yeah, I think I came back to campus. I had a hard time leaving. So I graduated and then I snuck back to campus maybe twice and just sort of hung out near the admin offices.
Because we're great.
Yeah, it's hard to say goodbye.
Yeah. And in full disclosure, Adwoa did used to work as a graduate assistant in the Career Center. So she has nothing but wonderful things to say about us, obviously.
Of course. No, do this. I think this is really, really awesome and really exciting for current students and alum to be able to kind of check in and engage and see familiar faces or see new faces. Like, I'm excited to watch other people's interviews and listen to what other alums have to say too.
Yeah, we are excited. It's been a kind of a whirlwind trying to figure out how to do all the things we would normally do to engage alumni, but at a distance and digitally. So this is one way. We're going to be doing some really interesting alumni chats as well, so everyone can kind of look forward to those. We're going to do a whole thing with Foundation. But for now, why don't you go ahead and tell everyone a little bit about what you've been doing since you left Heller?
Yeah, so I moved to New York and I started working the Bridges Impact Foundation, which is the foundation arm of Bridges Fund Management. And Bridges is impact investing fund. So we raise money to invest it in usually smaller companies, and we serve the entire country, primarily the East Coast and central US. So the program that I manage for Bridges, and there's like a lot of layers to this, but the program that I manage is called the MIINT, which stands for MBA, Impact Investing, Network, and Training. And the way I describe the MIINT is it's the best program to learn about impact investing, to get a hands-on experience in impact investing, and to connect and network with peers across the globe about kind of what's happening in the industry. So it's this year-long program that I manage with students, and it kind of bakes in some of my past career experience as well as my interest in impact investing. And so I've been doing that since August. So I started that in August. I did something else before I got to MIINT, but this is really the most exciting thing since graduating.
Good. I'm glad to hear it's exciting. It's based in New York, but you are not in New York right now.
No. So I was so excited. I got this great apartment in Harlem, which I get lost really, really easily no matter where I am. And so I found this place that's like right on the train line to get to work. It's close to where my sister lives in the city. Perfect. But when the pandemic was spreading, being in New York City, I personally didn't want to be in New York during the height of the pandemic because we really are like sardines in the city. There's just not a lot of space. So my sister and I left, came to North Carolina where my parents live. And so I have been sheltering in place in the suburbs back in my childhood home. So I miss New York. I miss the city, but with Broadway shut down, with restaurants, closed until recently, all the things I loved about the city, I couldn't do anyway.
Yeah, fair enough. I feel like it doesn't even feel like living in a city right now because you're just in your tiny little bubble. So I hope that you are able to get back soon.
Me too.
So let's talk a little bit though about impact investing, right? Because this is something that students are getting a little bit more interested in. It's sort of an emergent field. How is it different from regular investing, whatever that means? And how does your organization in particular kind of be impactful?
Yeah. So the thing that I like, but it's also one of the challenging pieces of impact investing, is that it's not quick and simple to define. So I'll give like the formal definition and then maybe talk about what that kind of looks like a little bit more like realistically. So there's an organization called the GIN, There's also another one called the Tonic, which is kind of cute, but everything has the double I's for impact investing. So the GIN, the Global Impact Investing Network, has defined impact investing as investments made with the intention to generate positive, measurable, social, and impact alongside a financial return. So the gist of it is that there's impact and financial return really at the heart of impact investing. But impact investing covers a lot of things. So there's like this spectrum of capital where you have sort of traditional investing, like just fiduciary, like a corporation. And then on the other side, you have philanthropy. And so impact investing falls in the middle, slightly leaning towards philanthropy. And then within that are ways that you can do impact. So my company is a thematic investor. You have a thematic investor or impact first. So those in the Brandeis area, Boston Impact Initiative is impact first, which is like, it doesn't really matter what subject, what area, like what industry, it's all about the impact. So like their focus is like alleviating poverty in Boston. At Bridges, because we're thematic, we have some goals and buckets which have to do with health, education, and employment. So we're specific about what companies we invest in and give money to, that they relate to those themes. And then just because I know people might be wondering about ESG, because ESG is like a really big topic. ESG is sustainable investing, and that actually lies a little bit more towards like the core than what Bridges and what like Boston Impact Initiative are doing, because you can have an ESG filter or ESG screening that doesn't change too much of your day-to-day work, but it just makes sure that your values are aligned with environment, social, and governance.
Okay. That is a lot.
yeah, it's a lot. I've got a little chart here that I keep near my desk to just help remind me that it's the definition of, between philanthropic and, fiduciary corporate, but then in between there is a sliding range. And then I won't even get into all the details of like the origin and history of all of it. There's socially responsible investing and other things that just kind of pile on top of it. But basically folks were trying to find a way to, I think B Corp says like do good while also I messed up their slogan. It's like do well by doing good. Doing good. So finance plus the impact piece.
Yeah, for sure. I actually really like that definition. Is this something that only organizations for impact investing can do, or can individuals do impact investing?
Individuals can do impact investing. One of the things that I spent a lot of time on when I first got to the company, it was figuring out how an individual could invest, and they call it, I forget what it's called right now, but it's essentially a fancy phrase for an individual who wants to invest their own dollars into a company. And so I looked it up, and there are a handful of companies and funds where you can give your own money, as small as $25, or a lot of them, unfortunately, have a minimum threshold of $2,000, which is low on like in the grand scheme of things for investors, but a lot for like your average everyday person. So a fund that I really like is called C-Note. So they're a women-founded, women-led company, and you can start by investing any amount of money. So I think my first investment was like $20, and now I'm like a reoccurring $20 a month investor. And they take that money, put it together with all of the other people who are giving money, and invest it into entrepreneurs, primarily women, and then secondary people of color who are starting companies and looking for, just that kind of seed capital to help them get their ideas off the ground.
That's cool. I like that. And how did you find them?
I found C-Note just through a lot of research, like just a lot of Googling, going to conferences. So something that I did a lot when I was at Heller was I went to conferences and I just networked like every chance that I had, but I continued that. And my first like couple of months at work was just going to as many conferences to meet people. And I'd heard about C-Note. So every time I got to a table with like Calvert or these other like really big companies that invest your like retirement and 401k, I'd ask them, like how can an individual do impact investing, and CNote was one of the names that came up. There are a few other companies that are starting that, but to me, CNote they're solid. And yeah, so I met their founders at conferences, actually. So two different conferences. One of them I was just in the room as an audience member. The other one I actually sat next to one of the co-founders at a luncheon and just talked to her, and it just reaffirmed that this was a really solid company.
Nice. I love when those serendipitous moments just kind of happen, but you have to put yourself out there in order to, open yourself up to that. Yeah. I think it's really interesting. So when wealth management companies are starting to kind of create a piece where you can kind of click a box and say, I want part of my investment to be impact related. Do you think that's legit? I ask for very personal reasons because I invest with Ellevest. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
I think I've heard of them on my sort of how individuals can get involved list.
Yeah, Sally Krawcheck founded it, and it's like to open the door for women to do financial management in a way that they've been excluded for various horrible reasons. Yeah. But they've recently started doing a kind of, if you want some of your money to be targeted towards impact investing, check this box. And does that, and I don't want to get into the weeds here if this is not too far out of your wheelhouse, but does that feel like it's a step in the right direction, or does it feel like it's just another one of those things where companies say, oh no, we totally do this, your money's doing good, and then...
Yeah, it's kind of a step in the right direction, I'll say, like the fact that they're offering it. But what's happening in the sector is that people are seeing, so impact investing is still pretty young, but people are starting to see the returns now, and they're like, oh, if I made this investment 10 years ago in this impact fund versus a traditional fund, I'm getting the same amount of money. And so now that like the proof is in the pudding, it's easier to check the box and say like, oh, I'll designate some of my funds to be about impact or sustainability, which I think is just good in general. Like it's okay sometimes to not have the best of intentions, but the outcomes still be good. And I'm like saying that, I'm like cringing as I say it. But what I'm starting to see and hoping, and I think what a lot of us hope in impact investing, is that eventually the impact can be dropped and it's just investing. Like everyone's just doing good, sustainable investing, which includes diverse founders of color, founders of LGBTQ+, like that it just includes everybody.
Mm-hmm. That sounds like a good goal. It feels far away right now, but it also feels like a moment where maybe we're going to make some progress.
Yeah, agreed. It's still a long way coming. The fact that you can kind of count, on a couple of hands, the firms and the funds that are doing this kind of work means that there's still a lot of work to do.
Absolutely. And you are now part of getting that work done.
Yes, I am. That was always the goal, was to be a part of making a difference, even if it's just a small shift, but finding a way to, to move the needle. A lot of investment is about your network. It's who has access to you. And so if it's the same people, the same type of people who keep being investors, they're only going to know the same types of people. So for all the good intention about like, a company saying we want to invest more diversely, well, if they don't know any investors who have come out of HBCUs or inner cities, or investments who are queer, or, or women who are investors, if they don't know those people, they still won't make those investments.
Right. So is this something, when you came to Heller, is this something that you knew you wanted to do, or did it kind of organically be shaped by what you were learning?
I knew that I wanted to learn more about impact investing. I'll say that. I didn't know for sure that it's what I wanted to work on. So when I came to Heller, I cast like a pretty wide net. Like my first semester, I was like, okay, how can I learn about consulting? How can I learn about investing? How can I learn about entrepreneurship? So my concentration was social entrepreneurship and impact management. And I was even considering like a job in CSR at a foundation. So I was pretty open, but I knew that I wanted to be in something related to like sustainable, socially responsible investing. And so I just spent as much time as I could taking any class that sort of touched on that. And then even I was able to convince the MBA program and the professors there at the time to do a weekend course on impact investing, which was amazing to see it and be a part of it. So really, really glad that that happened during my time at Heller.
Good. Yes. I remember when we were talking about what that curriculum would look like, and I wish that I had gone to it. It looked really good.
Yeah, it was awesome. And again, like we brought in like practitioners, like people who had done it before. Oh, and one of the speakers, Andy Posner, who came in to teach that course, I met him at a conference in Denver, actually. So we reconnected.
Yay. Oh, Denver. Wonderful. So if you're still part of this conference space, are people still having conferences, or are they trying to do them online?
Everything's online. So my program shifted to a virtual finals where normally like we'd all meet in Philadelphia and you have like 150 people all together. We had to like nix that and go completely on Zoom. But all the other conferences are still happening virtually. So there was a convening of faculty in the socially responsible and social investing like sector that should have happened in New York. It was organized by the folks from Northwestern University. Anyway, but it was supposed to happen in New York and it was virtual. And then there's this larger conference called SOCAP. And SOCAP is about social capital markets. So anyone who's interested in impact investing or anything on that spectrum, I would highly recommend just check out SOCAP's SOCAP. Check out their website because they have a bunch of free videos and trainings. Like they record speakers who've spoken at conferences, main stage speakers, and you can just watch those and get an idea of like what you're actually interested in, because ultimately you have to pick what part of the sector you're interested in. So hearing more people talk about it would be great. So SOCAP, but their conference is virtual. So I got to go to San Francisco last year and attend, which was great because a lot of the networking, a lot of the true deals happen in between sessions, but now it's virtual and it's been okay. I'll say it's been okay. Like folks are trying to be creative. People are using different platforms that are not Zoom for conferences, which is helpful because you have this small learning curve of like figuring out a new platform that makes it challenging enough that you have to engage differently.
Yeah.
It's definitely not the same. You kind of can't sit next to someone and say like, tell me how you got into your work in a virtual chat box. It makes it a lot harder, but conferences are still happening.
Okay. That's really helpful. And I'll put the SOCAP information in the chat or in the whatever recording box thing when we upload this.
All this virtual talk, like I don't know how to reference
in the YouTube description box. We'll put it in there. But I've experienced the same thing. Alumni Career Services has its own organization. And we usually have this like really cool conference in the summer, and it was going to be in San Diego on Coronado Island this year. I was so excited. I was going to get away from my baby, have a little vacay. They did something online and it was nice, right? The speakers were really interesting. And I think, people had good ideas to share, but I think you're right? Most of the stuff that you remember, most of the kind of content and connections you make are those sort of casual, oh, hey, I just bumped into you and we're waiting for the next thing.
Exactly.
Going, right? And I think it's really hard to replicate that.
Absolutely. I put in a plug for students that right now conference rates are more affordable than they have been. And it's a lot easier to just like add an email and let somebody in a conference for free or under a scholarship than it might have been to like physically get you somewhere. So, don't give up hope, especially if conferences have been too expensive in the past.
Yeah.
And I think for those who are just like continuing learners, we have to be a little bit more choosy and selective than maybe before, since all the conferences are happening from our bedrooms and houses.
Yes. I think that's good advice, right? We always have that list of conferences and maybe there are more that are accessible now because they're online. So that's maybe the silver lining.
I think so. I think so. We're stretching a little bit, but if you can still conference and network during these times, like go for it. Just try to keep it short. Like I used to always schedule meetings to be an hour just to accommodate the full time. And I am all about like a 30-minute meeting right now, which is let's focus, let's get this done. If
Yeah.
it's longer, it does, but just trying to be more succinct and less longevity behind the screen if possible.
Yes, I think that's so true. Are there things, so Heller is going to be completely online for the fall. So our students are going to have very quick Zoom fatigue. What are you doing anything aside from making short meetings, which I think is pro tip right there? What else are you doing to kind of make sure that you're not just literally sitting in front of a screen all day long?
Yeah, it's hard. I try to keep at least one day of the week, and if I can, a few afternoons of the week where I don't schedule any meetings. Because if I don't have a meeting scheduled, then I can more freely kind of move around to different parts of the house and literally just getting up and walking to a different room. Or if you're in an apartment, you can just go up and down the stairs. Like moving makes a difference in your brain, in your body. You've got to move. I recently am trying to drink more water. I've got this now gallon jug that
Oh,
keeps,
it's encouraging. It's an encouraging.
yeah. Good morning, keep drinking, well done.
I love it.
Drinking water, stay hydrated. I haven't actually been doing these, but I learned a long time ago eye exercises where you should look up and away from your computer and sort of stare at an object far in the distance just to give your eyes a break from like staring at something that's very, very close. That's something that someone in IT taught me about 10 years ago, so I need to do that more. But yeah, so like walking around. And then the other thing that I'm doing just to keep my mind kind of loose is I'm listening to a bunch of audiobooks.
Yeah.
And
Sorry, I follow you on Instagram, so I get like.
yeah, the audiobooks have just taken on a life of their own. But I used to listen to music all the time, and I can't quite listen to like my music and do my work, but I can take breaks, or if I'm like going to wash the dishes or get a meal, I can put my headphones in and listen to a book, and it literally transports me out of like the place that I'm in. So I'm no longer thinking about dishes or thinking about how awful my last meeting was. Like suddenly I'm listening to this book, listening to, the speaker who's telling me about, the book I just finished was an oldie but a goodie. I just reread The Phantom Toll Booth. So I'm listening to Milo in the doldrums and so yeah, so it's been great. But I'd say, for folks to just try to find like hobbies or anything that makes them happy, no matter how silly it might seem. So, rereading a book from your childhood. I actually just bought a trombone, which is super, super random. It hasn't gotten here yet. Otherwise I'd show you, but I was just hanging out with my niece who's 3.5. And I was just thinking like, when was the last time I was super excited about like something random? And for some reason that day it popped into my head that in middle school, like I had a chance to play the trombone for a week and I always wanted to do it again. So I was like, how about now? Let's just see how it goes. There's no pressure, no one to impress. So, whatever it is, if you don't have like long-standing hobbies that you already do, like just try some new things.
I love that so much. I do not have a trombone, and I am not making sourdough bread.
Not yet. Not yet.
My husband absolutely wants to. But I've gotten really into doing hand lettering.
Oh yeah. I saw some of your lettering. That was fantastic.
Thank you. It's been really fun. And it's the books are always like these really cutesy quotes, and I just like don't ever do those. So I like take these weird dark things and make them pretty. But so that's what I've been trying to do. And I used to read everything on a Kindle.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like I just really needed to get off of a screen. And so I've been reading like analog books, like actual books. And that is just like its own eye exercise, I think.
Agreed. I have a couple here. I I don't know why. I'm like slow to open it up. Maybe it's still like grad school PTSD. That's not true. I read a couple of books when I was still in New York, like just super, super light reads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have read some really good books about baby oceanographers and
Nice.
training and a good night train. I can highly recommend the Good Night Train.
Read anything. Like, I know we're laughing about it, but my niece has this like super, super broad collection of books. And, the way that you simplistically talk about like leaves and clouds and colors, it's just something different. It's kind of nice.
It's very nice. And you're like, oh, this is so wonderful. Like childlike wonder. I love it. Okay, so with our final moments, what advice, I think that the advice about conferences is amazing. What other advice would you give to an incoming Heller student or a student that's maybe going to be graduating from the MBA program or any program this year? What can they be doing in this weird time where everything feels a little disconnected and feels like it's hard to grab those opportunities?
Yeah. I would say, if possible, if you're, around campus, maybe not physically on campus, if there are any opportunities to engage or interact with, Heller staff, we have amazing deans, and I don't know if they're associate or assistant deans, but like if you can interact with any of those folks, do it, because they're amazing. And I have nothing but like good memories from like randomly seeing any of those folks in the Heller hallways. And because they're not usually your professors or lecturers, there's like genuine interest in like, what have you been learning, or what are you up to, or what do you want to see more of? So I think that's usually like a fresh conversation that sometimes you don't think about. But if you have access or opportunity to be on a committee or, be in the same room or a meeting as any of those folks, like say hi, introduce yourself. The other thing is, don't forsake networking. So take, for example, the SOCAP, the mini conference I went to over the summer. What people were doing was utilizing the chat just to say like, hey, I'm interested in learning more about you. Like maybe I saw your LinkedIn page or something, do you want to connect? And then we'd set up a follow-up, 30-minute session on Zoom or something like that. So don't forsake networking. It still happens. I've made a lot of great contacts, like still over in quarantine. And also the Heller alums, like we're here, we're people, we're hanging out. Some of the recent MBAs reached out to me about their TCP project that they're working on. And it's like, I'll clear my schedule if, a Heller student needs anything. So reach out to current alums. We're all hanging out. I mean, I still keep in touch with a lot of my cohort, and like I can speak on behalf of them that we're busy, but we're not too busy to help a Heller student. And there were a lot of alums who helped me when I, got there my first semester, and even as I was graduating, who just gave me their advice and their tidbits. So reach out to the alums, connect with us, LinkedIn or emails, or if you can't find us, I guess go through Career Center, but we're around.
Yeah. Good. Yay. Oh, I'm so glad. This was wonderful. I love talking to you. I missed you.
Oh, I know. I've missed you too. There have been moments where I'm like, oh yeah, I did that when I was in the Career Center, and it do that better.
Well, we're going to see how the fall goes. We got some interesting programming coming up, so I hope the students will take advantage of it. But thank you for talking to me, and thank you for offering to be a resource for students. I think, the thing I always tell students, the number one is you have to connect to other alumni, right? You have to use what you have, and Heller alums are so great, and they'll say yes to you. So thank you for confirming.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can stay on the line, but I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording now. So I'll just say thank you, and we look forward to getting some students connected to you.
Awesome.